when a woman spotted a massive grizzly bear dragging a heavy canvas bag across her property. She thought it was the beginning of a nightmare. Alone in the woods, miles from the nearest ranger outpost, she reached for her phone, ready to call for help. But then the bear stopped, and what rolled out of that bag made her drop the phone and fall to her knees. This wasn't an attack, it was a plea. And what happened next will melt your heart and leave you in tears. Cassie Morrow had been living alone in the foothills of the Bitterroot Mountains for just under 3 months. After years of teaching in Spokane, she'd left everything behind to finally finish the memoir she'd been too afraid to write. The land was borrowed, a friend's cabin from childhood, tucked between tall ponderosa pines, with nothing but wind and memory outside her window. She had never seen a bear up close. Not until that morning. The sun was just beginning to rise when she heard something dragging across the gravel outside. Not walking, dragging. A slow, grinding sound, heavy and deliberate. She stepped quietly to the window, expecting maybe a deer caught in fencing, or worse, a poacher pulling something he shouldn't. But it wasn't a person. And it wasn't a deer. It was a grizzly. A large female. Her fur was dusted in earth and pine sap, her ears alert, her shoulders massive and scarred. Between her jaws, she gripped the end of a dirty canvas duffel bag, the kind hikers used to haul gear. Heavy, torn, and clearly stolen from somewhere. But she wasn't eating it. She was pulling it, with effort. Cassie froze. She didn't breathe. The bear dragged the bag slowly through the clearing, grunting occasionally, pausing to rest. Cassie's camera was on the table, but she didn't reach for it. This wasn't something you watched through a lens. This was something ancient and wrong. Why would a bear be dragging a bag? Then the bear stopped, about 40 feet from the cabin. She dropped the bag and turned to look behind her, ears twitching. And then, like she knew something was about to happen, she took 2 steps back and waited. The bag moved. Not from gravity. From inside. Cassie's heart hammered. She opened the door slowly, her hand trembling as she stepped onto the porch. The bear didn't move. Didn't charge. She simply sat, as if inviting the woman to come closer. The bag rustled again. Cassie walked barefoot, slowly. Every breath burned her throat. She got within 10 feet. The zipper had been chewed halfway open. Inside, a shape. Small. Brown. Shaking. A cub. He wasn't hurt, but he was weak. His tiny paws trembled as he tried to stand inside the twisted canvas. His eyes blinked slowly, crusted with dirt and fear. Cassie dropped to her knees. Tears filled her eyes. The mother grizzly made a low rumbling sound. Not a growl, but a vibration that echoed in Cassie's ribs. A warning. A goodbye. She didn't know. All she knew was, the bear hadn't brought him here to attack. She'd brought him here to ask for help. Cassie stayed kneeling beside the torn duffel bag. Too stunned to cry. Too alert to move fast. The cub was barely more than a bundle of bones and breath. He made no sound, only shifted, as if unsure if he was still in danger. The mother bear didn't approach. She sat at the edge of the pines, half-shadowed, eyes fixed on Cassie. Massive. Still. Terrifying. And beautiful all at once. Cassie looked down again. The bag had been dragged through hell, torn seams, burned edges, old blood stains. Whoever left it behind hadn't meant for anything inside to live. And yet the cub did. Somehow. And now the mother had brought him here, to her. Cassie stood slowly, heart slamming against her ribs. She backed up, palms out, inch by inch, until she reached the porch. The bear didn't move. Only when the cabin door shut did Cassie finally breathe again. She grabbed her phone. No service. Not even a bar. She stepped outside again and turned in a slow circle, searching for movement, a trail, anything. The mother bear was gone. No crashing branches. No retreating footsteps. Just gone. But the bag was still there. And inside, the cub whimpered. Back inside, Cassie wrapped a towel around her shoulders, grabbed a flashlight, and pulled an old apple crate from under the sink. She had no animal training. No vet experience. Just instinct, and something louder than fear growing in her chest. She approached the bag again. The cub's eyes met hers, dazed, barely focused, and she whispered, "I'm not going to hurt you, little one. I swear." She opened the bag the rest of the way, careful not to touch him. The cub made a faint, breathy grunt and collapsed sideways. She could see a bruise along his flank, a small cut on his paw, but nothing fatal. He was just weak. Too weak to stand. She lifted the crate slowly, scooped him into it using a towel, and carried it back toward the cabin. The woods were silent behind her, but she could feel it, eyes on her back. She turned just once and scanned the trees, and saw her. The mother. Watching. Not growling. Not following. Only watching. That night, Cassie laid the cub on a heating pad in the corner of her living room, placed a bowl of water beside him, and left the door unlocked, something she'd never done in her life. Just in case. Because somewhere out there was a mother who had let go of her child, but hadn't let go of hope. Cassie woke just after sunrise, still in the chair beside the cub. He hadn't moved much overnight, but his breathing was steadier. The towel wrapped around his body was damp with heat and sweat. The little bowl of water had been licked nearly dry. She couldn't explain the wave of emotion that hit her, relief, mostly, but something else too. A strange, rising need to protect him, to do right by the trust his mother had somehow shown. She had dragged him here, after all, not to hide, not to bury, but to deliver. To someone she must have hoped would help. Cassie opened the front door carefully, stepping into the icy morning, and froze. Paw prints. Large ones. They circled the porch once, twice. Not crashing, not panicked. No claw marks or broken boards. Just presence. The mother bear had been back, maybe just hours ago, maybe minutes. Cassie turned slowly, scanning the trees. She didn't see her, but she didn't have to. The woods felt different now, not threatening, just watched. She poured water into a larger bowl and set it by the porch railing, just in case. Back inside, the cub had lifted his head, barely. Wobbling. His eyes tracked her now. When she crouched beside him, he blinked slowly, not scared, not eager, just exhausted. She dipped a cloth into warm water and gently wiped the edges of his eyes. He didn't pull away. Around midday, she tried calling again. Still no service. She considered hiking the 2 miles up the ridge to where signal sometimes returned, but she couldn't leave him. Not now. That afternoon, she left scraps of apple and rice in a bowl just off the porch, unsure what a recovering cub could handle. When she came back an hour later, the bowl was gone. Not dragged, carried. She found it 20 feet into the trees, licked clean. She placed it there again the next night, and the next. And every time, it vanished, returned empty. Sometimes Cassie found fur on the bark of a nearby pine, sometimes nothing at all. But the message was clear: I'm still here. I'm still watching. And by the end of the week, the cub, still weak, still limping, crawled into Cassie's lap. She didn't move, didn't speak. Only wept silently as he breathed against her chest. Because she knew, somehow, he wasn't alone. And neither was she. The storm came in hard and fast. Heavy winds swept down from the mountain by late afternoon, and by nightfall, sheets of wet snow pelted the cabin roof like thrown gravel. Cassie layered blankets over the windows, stuffed towels at the base of the door, and checked the wood stove twice before finally settling beside the cub. He had made it through another day. His wounds had closed, his limp had softened, and his belly was full. But something about the wind that night kept her on edge, something that felt like waiting. Near midnight, the power flickered and died. Cassie lit 2 lanterns and placed one by the window. The world beyond was white, shapeless, silent. And yet she felt it again, watched. Not in fear, but in awareness. She sat beside the cub, brushing a warm cloth over his head, humming softly to herself. Then she heard it. Not a knock. Not claws. But a thump. Low. Heavy. At the front door. Her heart jumped. She stood slowly, lantern in hand, and stepped to the door. No shadows. No growls. Just that weight in the air. She opened it an inch and gasped. There she was. The mother. Soaked in sleet, her fur heavy with ice. She didn't move, didn't step forward. She just stood on the porch, her eyes fixed not on Cassie, but on something inside. The cub. Cassie turned to look behind her. He was awake, sitting, watching his mother. No sound passed between them. No cry. No paw to the door. Just recognition. And something deeper. Forgiveness. Reassurance. Cassie didn't know. She opened the door wider, took a step back, held her breath. The bear didn't enter. But she stepped forward enough to place one paw gently on the porch boards, right where the cub had once lain days earlier. She looked at Cassie, not as a threat, not as prey, but as someone who had done what she could. Then the mother bowed her head, just once, and disappeared into the snow. Cassie closed the door slowly, sat down beside the cub, and cried. Not out of fear. Not even relief. But because she knew now, without a doubt, she'd been chosen. Trusted. And somehow, through quiet desperation and instinct, she'd answered the call. When the storm cleared, the world outside Cassie's cabin looked transformed. The trees stood glazed with frost. The ground, hard-packed with ice. The sky above was the clearest she'd seen in days, pale blue and less, almost too bright to look at. It was time. The cub was strong enough to stand on his own now. He followed Cassie from room to room, wobbly but curious. His eyes were brighter, his breath steady. He no longer whimpered in his sleep. But help still hadn't come. And it was up to her to find it. Cassie packed quickly, snacks, water, a flashlight, a blanket. She placed the cub gently into a padded backpack she'd lined with towels, his head peeking from the half-open top. He didn't resist. He simply looked up at her with quiet trust. It was a 6-mile hike to the old ranger station. She didn't know if it was still manned. She didn't care. She had to try. The trail was slick, but she moved steadily. The cub didn't make a sound. His tiny paw occasionally brushed her shoulder from inside the bag, almost like a tap of reassurance, or a reminder that he was still with her. They were nearly 2 miles in when she saw it. Just off the trail, in a clearing untouched by wind, lay a body. Massive. Still. Covered lightly in snow. Cassie froze. Her breath caught in her chest. She stepped closer. It was her. The mother bear. She had curled herself in a half-circle near a fallen log, her head resting on her front paws. Her eyes were closed. Her body was at peace. There was no blood. No sign of injury. Only stillness. Cassie dropped to her knees. The cub squirmed gently in the bag, and when she unzipped it, he climbed out slowly and walked to her, not confused, not frightened, just present. He nudged his mother's shoulder with his nose, waited, then laid beside her, his head against her chest. Cassie couldn't hold back the tears. The realization hit her in waves. The mother bear had brought her son as far as she could. She had endured wounds, hunger, the fire. She had dragged him across ice, through storms, to the only place she believed he'd be safe. And when she knew he was, she let go. Cassie stayed there for hours, wrapped in silence. And when the cub finally stood again, he walked straight back to her and didn't look back. The ranger station was little more than a shack at the edge of the old fire road, a long-forgotten outpost boarded up since early fall. Cassie nearly cried when she saw the thin curl of smoke from the chimney. Someone was inside. She banged on the door with a frozen fist, the cub tucked against her chest now, his face pressed beneath her scarf. It took a moment before the door opened. An older man, gray beard and tired eyes, looked her up and down. "You're not supposed to be out here alone." Cassie exhaled a shaky breath. "I wasn't." Inside, the stove was hot. The man's name was Doug. He poured her tea and listened as she unraveled the whole story, the dragging bag, the cub inside, the mother in the trees, the storm, the visit on the porch, and finally, the clearing on the trail. Doug didn't interrupt. He didn't scoff. He only asked one question when she was done. Why didn't she stay? Cassie looked down at the cub curled beside her boots. Because she'd already done her part. Doug radioed wildlife control. An hour later, 2 agents arrived with a crate, forms, and flat expressions. They were clinical, efficient. They checked the cub's breathing, inspected his legs, whispered terms like rehab, transitional housing, state custody. Cassie said nothing until they reached for him. Then she stood. "Stop." The room went silent. The cub hid behind her legs. "I know what this looks like," she said, her voice calm but shaking. "But you're missing the part that matters." One of the agents raised an eyebrow. "And what's that, ma'am?" Cassie stepped back, placed a hand gently on the cub's back. "He wasn't just abandoned. He was given. His mother didn't die running from you. She didn't die in fear. She died watching me take care of him. And that," she paused, steadying her voice, "that makes me responsible now." Doug cleared his throat. "She's telling the truth." The room shifted, and for a moment, no one moved. In the end, they didn't take him that day. Doug offered to report the cub as a special case, one to be evaluated, not claimed. And until further notice, the cub would stay with Cassie. At least for now. At least until someone proved they'd earned what the mother had already decided, that trust doesn't come from cages. It comes from what you show up for, even when no one's watching. Spring came early that year. The air warmed, the ice melted, and the paths behind Cassie's cabin turned from mud to moss. Every morning, the cub, bigger now, stronger, faster, woke her up by pawing at the front door, his breath fogging the glass. She named him Ash, not because of the fire that nearly took him, but because of what his mother walked through to carry him beyond it. They lived simply, long hikes, warm meals, moments of joy that came without explanation, like the way Ash always chased shadows at noon, or how he nestled under the porch at night, just close enough to hear her heartbeat through the wood. Cassie didn't try to tame him. She wasn't trying to make him hers. She was only keeping a promise. One morning in late May, she walked the same trail she had hiked that cold day months ago, the day she found the body. Ash followed her, not in the backpack anymore, now on his own legs, bounding from side to side, pausing to sniff wild flowers, darting ahead, but always looking back. They reached the clearing. The snow was long gone. Only moss and memory remained. Cassie stood in the place where the mother bear had lain, closed her eyes, and whispered, "He's okay. You did it." Ash made a sound behind her, a low huff. She turned to find him frozen, staring into the trees. Cassie followed his gaze. At first, nothing. Then, movement. A figure. A shadow. Not a bear, a shape too small, too graceful. Another cub, maybe half Ash's size. And behind it, the unmistakable outline of a large grizzly, watching. Not moving. Not threatening. Just watching. Cassie's breath caught. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't speak. The mother bear blinked slowly, then turned and disappeared into the woods. Ash didn't follow. He stepped beside Cassie, brushed against her leg, and sat down. No one needed to say it, because some things are felt. The way roots feel water. The way cubs know safety. The way grief leaves space for something new. That night, Cassie wrote her final journal entry. She brought him here because she couldn't save him alone. And now he stays because I don't want to let him go. But one day I will, because the forest doesn't keep what it gave freely. It only asks that we hold it with both hands, and let go when the time is right. If this story moved you, share it. If it reminded you that wild love is real, and sacrifice leaves something behind, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell someone about the green-eyed bear who dragged a bag, and left the world something better inside it. Because she wasn't just a bear. She was a mother who gave everything for a chance. And sometimes, that's all any of us really need.